All right, everybody, welcome back again to the KSR YouTube channel, where it is hopefully the video where we are taking the body off of Val Morris's 2010 Camaro drag and drive car, soon to be powered by an all billet SML small block LS based, small block, engine from Steve Morris Racing Engines. I mean, that's her husband, so yeah, makes sense that is the engine she would use. Anyways, today I need to work on wrapping up the window net. You can see I've got the parachute handle bolted in, and that's going to have the switch panel also is going to be right here, so I'm going to work on that as well. That's one of the things that I need to get checked off of my list for today. So I guess it's time for us to go ahead and get started on this, and Eddie's working on the tail end of the car still, working on the wing mount and the bumper stuff, bumper mounting still. So I'm going to go over a little bit of all of that here in just a minute. So yeah, let's go. So one thing I did forget to show in the last video are the carbon fiber end plates for the dash, and basically this is some of the leftover wheel tub. That's why there's tape on this side of it but not on that side of it. And this is going to eventually be a Zeus fastener. So these outer ones just rivet that panel to the dash, and then this one here is where it goes to the tab there, and is going to be one of the Zeus fasteners that mounts the dash. And really, it's like already, just with those in there, it's pretty strong. So I'll walk around and you can kind of see the dash tucks under this edge right here. Kind of sits pretty nicely on top of our plate right there. Got a little gap, but won't be able to see that with the windshield on. And then over here, I made a little tiny angled piece. You can see that piece of steel right there. And the dash tucks under that when it gets pushed all the way forward. So makes it where it's nice and sealed up. And we are going with Optic Armor blackout drop-in windows for the front and the rear. The side windows are still glass. The rear quarters, don't know if we'll make those out of carbon or maybe just another piece of optic armor, because you really can't see much out of these anyway. Like, yeah, can't see anything out of those. So I need to stop running my mouth and get to doing some work. Here we go. Alright, so first order of business to making the upper front anchor for the window net is I'm using some really heavy wall 5/8 chromoly tubing that the spring-loaded top bar is going to pilot and locate into. So you can kind of see doing a little fitment work here to make sure it fits in and out of it nice and easily. And the kit came with a tab that was supposed to go in the forward location. The tab was like, 60 thousandths of an inch. Actually, it might have been 90 thousandths of an inch thick. And if you guys have ever crawled in and out of a car before that has had a tab in this window area, especially if the car is really low, when you're climbing in and out of the car, you're bonking your helmet on it, you're catching your fire suit on it, and it's just not great. So my idea for this front piece is to use that piece of tubing that I bent, at like a 45-degree angle and then blended it up into the tube. So the idea there is that there's not really something to catch yourself on. Now you may bonk yourself on it, but as far as, that tube sticking out there is going to be something that's not sharp, and I'm actually going to fill the gap between the tube and the roll cage itself too, so that you can't get like a finger stuck in there or any part of your fire suit that might be loose and could get caught in there. And I think this is just another little thing that makes the overall fit and finish of the car a heck of a lot nicer. And now Eddie and I are working on the back of the car again together. First order of business is to get the upper mount for the taillight / rear bumper, get that tack welded to the quarter panels. And now we're kind of going over and talking about how we're going to do some of the fitment for where the wing struts land on the rear bumper, and then how we're going to tie those into the chassis. And it's not super obvious here, but I'm pretty sure during this time, in fact I know he did, we used our laser, and it kind of funny that it worked out that the tripod that I normally use for the GoPro cameras, we bought another one and adapted our laser. Like I have just, one of these home construction auto leveling lasers, and it puts out a vertical axis and a horizontal axis that can be set to where they auto level, or we can lock them so that if we want it to tip the laser one direction or another, but it gives us this perfectly straight line to work off of. And if we choose to, that line can be perfectly level, which is great when the car is set up perfectly level in its home. So it just works out really good, gives us something to work back on and verify that we are doing things to where we won't have to go back and redo them because they aren't level. So once those pieces are clecoed to the bumper, Eddie went and made some plates that kind of mimic the outside plates where the wing struts mount into, and the inside plates aren't as super detailed as the outer plates. I mean, they're still nice looking little plates, but now that they are on the back side of the bumper, Eddie's working on bending some chromoly tubing that will go from the chassis up to the plates on the back side of the bumper, and then all of that will be bolted together with some small stainless bolts with nylock nuts on the back of it, just so that literally when you push on the wing, when the wing tries to push down from downforce, it is actually pushing on the chassis of the car and not just pushing on the rear bumper so that it could get folded up and just squish down the rear bumper, and you lose the effectiveness of the rear wing. Kind of like with the front end. Like when you have these factory bumpers and whatnot, you need to support them so that even a fiberglass bumper, you support them at the very front of the car so that when they're being impacted with, even 180 mile an hour wind, it doesn't fold that bumper in and break your front bumper. So being pretty considerate, or at least keeping in mind what the air is going to do to the car, is pretty important. So now Eddie is machining the pilot tubes that are going to anchor the parachute pack mount at the back of the car. We're going to break out the laser here again and then use the size tubing that fits inside of these little pilot tubes. And then I'm going to go out behind the car to make sure that everything's nice and straight, because if it's straight 3 feet behind the car, it's really, really straight up close to the car. Like it kind of numbs the thing we're working on here to make sure everything stays perfectly straight. All right, so Eddie and I are working on Val's Camaro again today. And you might have seen us using the laser to make sure that this and this are perfectly straight with each other, because that is where the parachute frame is going to pilot. And then we're going to eventually drill a hole through here. It'll capture this piece of pipe. Look, Eddie's standing around again.
Clocking in so I can get to work.
So, makes it nice and easy. Check that out. So that way the parachute pack and all that mount is removable, and the bumper will still be removable. And Eddie did a really nice job there on making that super, super tight. Still ties into the bar down there, so you can see that's got to be welded.
What'd I do good?
Things.
Yes.
Your pilot tubes are real nice. You needed needed me for the making sure it was like
I just wanted
perfect.
to let you feel like you're doing something, you know?
Yeah.
Make you feel like you're actually doing something.
You walked in the office and asked me to come help you.
Did I though?
Yes.
I don't think so.
100%.
No.
100%. So now that he's got some direction to go on that, can finish welding those in, I am going to continue working on my bar for the switch panel mount. So I started on that the other day. I don't know if we showed these tabs that Eddie worked up in, what program do you use?
Fusion 360.
Fusion 360.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, super easy. It's free for the, like, to just do send, cut, send stuff. You can just get like the at-home personal version.
Gotcha.
And then you can use them to make that, and then upload
so they were flat, and then we bent them so that they
yeah, I'm pretty proud of that.
Turn
Follows
90.
it real.
It does. Those are pretty nice. Yeah, that's downright professional looking. And I did order some longer bolts because those are about a 1/16 of an inch too short. Ordered some 1/8 of an inch longer ones. So, ooh, let's not scratch the carbon. I'm gonna get back in here and work on that. Probably have dueling time lapses here. We'll have 2 cameras set up, so I'll have one on me and then I'll switch back and forth in the editing. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Here we go. So I'm including another pretty big time lapse section here, and just want to show you guys a lot of the small little intricate stuff that goes into building one of these cars. You know, at least for when we build them, we try and think of every possible thing that we've got to do because, for example, on this car, once we finish all of this mounting things, and you know, if we weren't powder coating the chassis, we could be welding this stuff, painting it, assembling it, and getting to the track much sooner, but the final appearance of the car would really suffer in that it just wouldn't be super clean looking. So what we have to go through and do, like you see on my checklist that's beside the car over there on the whiteboard, we are trying to go through and think of every single thing that is going to mount to the chassis, as well as think of some extra things that may happen in the future, and then install some threaded inserts in some various spots in the chassis so that we can make a bolt-on fixture or a bolt-on mount for something else that goes into the car, just so that we can add those things at a future date and not mess up the powder coat. Now, more than likely, there's probably going to be something that gets forgotten. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast with these things. But we are really putting in an effort to think of everything, and each person in the shop at one point will kind of come over and take 5 or 10 minutes to look at the car and, you know, just brainstorm about things that we might need. For example, one of the things we thought of here actually during the filming of this video is the center transmission tunnel. Under that, where there's the double frame rail, we are going to add some threaded inserts into there so that we can add like a bolt-on cup holder setup for the car. So that's something that might show in next week's video. I might do after we take the body off the car. Like, we'll have to weigh that all out and see how the planning of everything goes. But just lots and lots and lots of different things to think about, because once we take this thing off and get it powder coated, the idea is that when it makes it back into the shop, things start getting installed and they're there for good. The wheel tubs will go in, the rear end will go in, the rear suspension will go in, you know, the air pump will get mounted. We'll start wiring the car. Like, when the thing comes back from powder coat, it's going to really, really be full steam ahead as far as getting the car ready to go. So with that same process in mind, We are also final mounting the tubs to the chassis as well as all the filler panels, because we don't want to have to go back and add mounts to them. Some people or some companies, they fit all the carbon to where it just lays on top of the roll cage tubing and then gets riveted to it. Or same with aluminum, you don't have to do carbon fiber, but if you do aluminum, you can kind of make it to where it sits nicely on top of the tube and it doesn't look bad. I do think that this car is really going to pop in the interior when we've got the chassis one color, which we're not going to tell you just yet, and then the carbon fiber will be inlaid and fit very tightly to all of the roll cage bars. So I really think it's going to look awesome, and it will probably be kind of the same way that I end up doing my car with the carbon interior from the main hoop back, just to really try and make the cars look really nice inside and outside. So what Eddie's working up here is the outer piece that will go from the main hoop of the car out to the body line, and it's going to land on the body at the same point that the wheel tub ends at the body. So that piece is kind of diagonal, and you can see he's got a piece that's mocking up on the horizontal that kind of is pointing to the corner, and then actually making it where it will bolt the front edge of the wheel tub as well as to the top piece that's going to fill in the space between the seat and the front of the wheel tub. Now in some Pro Mods, they use such a large wheel tub that the wheel tub actually fits right almost to the back of the seat. And that's not what we're doing here. These are 36-inch wheel tubs that we've put into this car. So can't run giant tubes. Obviously you can't fit a huge 36-inch tall tire inside of a 36-inch wheel tub, but the car was built to be a small tire car, small tire radial, small tire slick, and even with that being the case, it would still fit, you know, a 32-inch slick. I don't think it would be too much of a problem. Maybe even a 33 10.5. We'll have to see if they ever go down that path, but in the beginning stages, the car is going to be on either a 275 or a 315 drag radial, and she should be pretty doggone quick. So Eddie used a regular piece of filler strip that we got, or rivet strip, or whatever it's called there, and then where it mates to the roll cage down there at the bottom, we made a filler piece that kind of closes it out nice, and it'll make it to where the carbon doesn't have to fit into like the nooks and crannies down in these kind of corners. So it's a little extra effort now to make the car where it will seal up with the steel, and then when the carbon bolts on top of it, the carbon will not have to, you know, try and seal all the little nooks and crannies, and because the steel has already done that and the carbon is just laying on top of the steel. So anyways, we are moving along here with that, and once all of these get made, it's literally the last parts of mounting the rear wheel tubs in the car, and they get welded. Usually we weld them like every other inch, and then we'll also kind of we start at the center with that, and then we'll weld around the end of these filler strips, just so that there's a little bit of weld on each side of the filler strip. That way all the weld isn't in the same plane. When you have the thickness of the strip there and then weld on the back side of it, it makes it to where it is a lot harder to break the thing off if you know, something bumped up against it. So getting this thing wrapped up little bit by little. Well, give me like 2 minutes. So while Eddie is working on wrapping up the carbon mounts, well, he's got this side done, which probably showed up in the time lapse. So yeah, there's that. So there's going to be a carbon piece that fills in. Let's back off a little here. Fills in there, and then another one that fills in there. And you might notice there's a little bit of a gap there. Well, we decided to use all of the tub, and what we're going to do is panel bond a piece to the body that fills out there. And then this hole is going to catch it, and the piece that's panel bonded to the body will be outside of the wheel tub, so that'll actually pinch that and bring it all together. And then from here to the corner will be a 90-degree folded piece, kind of similar to this. Probably not titanium, because it doesn't have to have the impact resistance that these pieces do. Yeah, this is titanium. But there'll be a filler piece there, and then this corner, there'll be a corner right here that will contain the top of that piece. So Eddie's wrapping that up on that side. That looks pretty doggone sweet. Checking off lots and lots of little stuff. And I'll tell you, like, I really thought we were gonna get the body off of this thing this week. It might be next week, because it's Friday. I even pushed this video to film all the way through Friday to see if we could get through, get all the way through. And we've, like, if you see the list, there's a whole lot more stuff checked off on it. Yeah. I decided to just order one of these from Motion Raceworks. That it's just gonna clamp to the bar, so technically that's done, because it's ordered. Working on, I've got that started, the rear brake line through the chassis. Rear upper seat supports, can't do that until we take the seat and the tubs back out, but I do have them marked, and then it's just weld 2 inserts. Show you guys more of that. And some of this stuff we could actually do with the body off of the car. But the last of the front tub fitment, that's all that's left to consider the tubs fully mounted, at least. Yeah, we might go ahead and make the rest of the filler pieces. But then also we've got to work out what we're doing here, whether we're gonna have a bolt-on piece, which is kind of the direction we're leaning, have a bolt-on piece, so we'll put some threaded inserts up here above where this, see, I'm lining up the edge with the carbon tub edge, so you got the carbon, back of the carbon tub right there. There's going to be a panel that bridges the gap from there all the way out to here, and then we'll have another carbon piece that fills in there. So we've got a strip to weld here of this scallop strip stuff. Got to do that. Eddie's got the, you can see the wing. Let's see, let's get over here. So the wing, that plate right there that those 2 tubes go to, that's the back of this. So this bumper, this piece right here is effectively part of the cage with the bumper sandwiched in the middle of it. And then these right here are for the brackets that are eventually going to come up and anchor the corner of the trunk edge, so that the top part of the wing is also tied directly to the chassis. Lots of little detail work, but this thing's going to be so sweet when it gets on the ground. All powder coated, like just powder coated and all that cool stuff. But while Eddie's been doing that, I started mocking up our battery mount for the 16-volt battery that Steve is sending us for the car. So he's sending us a Braille 16-volt deal. And this is a mount we picked up from Cameron Johnson Race Cars. Same guy's building Cletus's new Eagle race car. I actually known Cameron for quite a while, but he's got some pretty trick parts, and you might see some on the Cutlass. I definitely know one big thing that I want to do. It's expensive, but titanium, yeah, I like titanium. So anyways, this battery is going to mount right here, just like this. So I'm going to have a tab that catches this top bracket that holds the battery in. And then I'm going to drill an extra hole right here that will tie the frame to the frame of, I guess the frame of the battery mount. That'll be bolted to the chassis. I'm going to drill 2 holes in here. Well, just a nut here. There's a roll bar right underneath this. So I'm going to try and work it out where I cut a big enough hole that I can first weld the nut to the roll bar underneath, and then come back around with silicon bronze and weld the sheet metal back to the edge of the nut. So just trying to tie all that together. And then the battery cutoff solenoid that'll disconnect the whole car, that'll go right here on the edge of the plate. So that way, either that way or this way, I haven't decided yet, but same mounting. That way the whole battery module can come out. And I may even add another tab down here so that there's 2 bolts that always hold this down to the car. And then that way when you take the mount out to, say, change the battery or take the battery out of the car or anything like that, you don't have to worry about anything moving there. But like I said, lots of little detail work. I'm gonna get to work on wrapping this up for today, and then hopefully have some more to show you by the end of this video. It's definitely getting exciting. Can't wait to see this thing with an engine in it, get some wires hung through it. Yeah, good stuff. Well, I figured I would bring you guys along for the ride on installing this Cameron Johnson race car's battery mount. And I'm going a little above and beyond, or at least how the mount was originally designed, by adding some extra bolts to the roll cage that will be separate of the mounting bolts that hold the battery to the mount itself. So a pretty nice little piece, and you can see I bolted one of the electronics panels in. There's actually 2 separate electronics panels, and then the VPS is mounted to the roll bar, the dash bar, and then the MSD Pro 600 will be over on the driver's side, just so it has a little bit of space between the main electronics and all of the really noisy ignition electronics. So those will be over on the driver's side of the car. But got to make some little tabs here. Or actually, we took them out of we have a box that has a bunch of different tabs that we regularly use. Some that we get from other companies, some that we've drawn up and then had laser cut. And it's kind of nice to have little stuff like that. And right now what I'm doing is TIG welding some more of those 1/4-28 jet nuts to the back of the tab. Super lightweight little nut, and they're nice because at the very top of those nuts, the nut is distorted so that it's kind of like a metal locking nut, but they're really high quality nuts. And so far anyways, we have not ever had a bolt gall up and get stuck inside of them. Like they're aerospace nuts. The guys that have the airplane company, the small experimental airplane company, kind of turned me onto them years ago. And I've been using quite a bit of them in different things. And this threaded insert into the roll cage stuff is really helpful, because a lot of times you want to add something to the car, but if the roll cage is already painted all nice and everything, you don't want to have to go back and grind paint or powder coat off. So on an existing car, obviously we would have to grind the paint or the powder coat off, but if we're building a car, we try and put extra mounts in just so that you never know what might get added in the future. And as light as they are, it's really, we're talking fractions of ounces here for even like a handful of them. So the only thing it costs is the extra time and labor to drill and install them into the chassis. So hopefully we've put enough in for getting lots of extra stuff mounted, and we cover all of our bases there. And it's going to make it to where you know, the car doesn't have to go back and get the powder coat ground off of at any point. So, welding in the different tabs for the battery mount now, and you might have seen the magical crowbar reach in from across the chassis. That was Eddie holding that to help push the top part of the battery mount out to the chassis so that I can weld that upper tab right there. And on this lower tab, I may make another pass because the weld isn't super great, because I'm kind of working backwards over in a hole. But once the body comes off, that will be easily accessible. But now that everything is welded, we're going to attempt to bolt the battery box back in to make sure all of our holes line up. And as it turns out, they do. Everything's great. And we'll bolt the cutoff solenoid to it. And that's a wrap. Well, that wraps up the battery mount and cutoff solenoid. This cuts all power between the battery and the rest of the car. Nice, sturdy, maybe a little overboard because originally the way they send these, it only has the 3 bolts. But we incorporated some extra. I got to imagine that's why they leave some extra width on here, just to add some extra mounting spots. But we are super duper mounted, and the battery is effectively held to the cage. And we could, if we decided to ever remake it this part out of steel or something, but that's what they're using in some of their builds. So I would assume it's going to be all right for this thing. And we're using, like I said, the lightweight 16-volt Braille battery. But that gives us something else to check off. And Eddie got the wheel tubs the rest of the way mounted. Check that off. Whew, there is not a lot. These I think I may do once the body comes off. I'll just flip the chassis over and do it from the bottom. Still working on that. Still got to do the air pump mount, although the body could come off first there. Bunch of little tiny things. Really the only thing that 100%, is 2 things that 100% need to happen before the body comes off, and that is finishing the steering column mount, as well as the, what else was there going to be? Oh, the stuff that closes out the rear bumper, which Eddie started working on. You might have seen that in the time lapse. And I think what we settled on is we're going to just do some threaded inserts up above that line right there, and then we'll have a bolt-on flange that'll either have some Zeus fasteners in it, or we will have a piece of steel that goes the whole way out to the bumper, like a piece of sheet metal, and then gives us a spot to like just install. This panel will come in from the bottom, and then it can have a Zeus fastener in the middle, and then one over here or something that's like a lip or something, which we've still got to work out a little bit of what we're doing over here, which the other side's actually got the mount on it, but we don't want this to be able to catch air, so we may do some kind of mount or do a rivet strip through the bottom here, try to hide it. Of course, this will all be covered in rubber, you know, shortly after the car starts going to the track, and those rivets will be hidden. But we're trying to make it where there's not a lot of obvious body fasteners on the outside of it. There will be for the front end, because there's, you know, the front end will be removable. But kind of see what we got going on with the tub's final install there, and like that is super sturdy, and this is all really just hand tight. Alright, unfortunately, that's gonna wrap it up for this video, and the body's still on. But appreciate everybody watching, following along, subscribing. I'll see you guys next time.